BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNid88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to BBOR, the home of true crime talk radio and your premier destination for unsolved mysteries, criminal psychology, and exploring the dark side of cyberspace. My name is Ned DeHaan, and I am your host, as well as the creator of AstroPsych 400 here on YouTube, and regular contributor to the Zodiac Killer channel. And a great way to support these shows is just by listening to some more content. But you can also go over to Amazon.com and have a look at the book Killer on a White Horse, written by me, Ned DeHaan. It is a novel, murder mystery, inspired by the Zodiac Manson connection, but it is indeed fictional. However, who doesn't love a good mystery? And there is always the Teespring page. Feel free to check out some of the merchandise. And remember, being weird is not a crime. Let the show begin. Alright, hello everybody. Today is Friday, another Anything Goes Friday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? This is mostly a true crime channel, and I talk about unsolved mysteries. However, about a month and a half ago, I did an episode on the Plymouth shooting from the United Kingdom and the story of Jake Davison, the person who committed that one. And I've talked about mass shootings in the past before, but this is a story that needs almost no introduction because the Sandy Hook shooting took the world by storm back in 2012. And I was sitting in a cafeteria recently, and they had a television on, and it showed a story about it is now the 10th anniversary, or maybe a better way of putting it rather than an anniversary, is it's the 10th year that has passed since the Sandy Hook shooting, which was committed by an individual named Adam Lanza. And this is an absolutely terrible story, but the reason why I chose to talk about it here on BlackBoxOnlineRadio is because it was very pivotal in how people would respond to mass shootings, particularly by using the internet. And there's actually an entry in the Encyclopedia Britannica about the Sandy Hook shooting. Sandy Hook Elementary School, also known as Newtown, was the site of a mass shooting in 2012 in Newtown, Connecticut, on December 14th, 2012, that left 28 people dead and 2 injured. After murdering his mother at their home, Adam Lanza fatally shot 20 children and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary School, taking his own life. It was one of the deadliest mass shootings at a school in United States history. And the 28 people that were left dead includes Adam Lanza's mother as well as Adam himself. The attack began when 20-year-old Adam Lanza killed his mother, Nancy Lanza, in the home that the two shared in Newtown. She was shot 4 times with a .22 caliber rifle. She had purchased the rifle, as well as other firearms, and that Adam Lanza would use later in that day. In the years prior to the shooting, they kept multiple firearms in the house. Before leaving home, Lanza destroyed his computer hard drive, an act that would make evidence gathering difficult for law enforcement personnel. Adam Lanza gathered together several firearms and drove his mother's car to Sandy Hook Elementary School, a public school in Newtown, for kindergarten through the 4th grade. Leaving a shotgun in the car, Lanza shot his way through a window to the school's locked security door just after 9:30 a.m. He was immediately confronted by Sandy Hook principal Dawn Hawksprung and school psychologist Mary Sherlock. Lanza shot and killed both women, but the encounter and the sounds of gunfire were broadcast to individual classrooms via the school's public address system. In accordance with previously established lockdown protocols, teachers immediately took steps to attempt to safeguard their students, concealing them in closets or bathrooms and barricading doors with furniture, and even using their own bodies. Lanza entered the classroom of teacher Lauren Rousseau and killed her and 14 children. He then went to a second classroom where the 1st grade teacher Victoria Soto had hidden her students in a closet. She attempted to misdirect Lanza by telling him that her class was in the school's auditorium on the other side of the building. Lanza killed Soto as well as 6 students who attempted to flee from their hiding place. Also killed in the shooting were Anne Marie Murphy, a special education aide, and behavioral therapist Rachel Davino. Two other Sandy Hook staff members were injured. Lanza fired 154 rounds in less than 5 minutes, claiming 26 lives. The first emergency call came from the school at 9:35 a.m., and law enforcement personnel responded within minutes. The first officers to enter the building caught a glimpse of an individual dressed in dark clothing, and after hearing a series of shots, they found Lanza near the door to Soto's classroom, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. As the scale of the attack became clear, dozens of state and local police officers descended on the school, which police officials said would remain closed as a crime scene indefinitely. The school would be demolished in 2014 and replaced by a new building occupying the same site but with a different impression in 2016. Investigators determined that Adam Lanza had used multiple weapons, but one of his rifles was the primary weapon used throughout the attack, and he took his own life with a handgun. And again, that is a very basic introduction. And firstly, rest in peace to all of the victims. Absolutely saddening. But there's some reasons why I wanted to talk about this particular story, because firstly, I wanted to say that this episode has no direct political affiliation or endorsement, nor anything to do with some of the political issues that have been connected to mass shootings. And I noticed that as I was watching the 10th anniversary special, that almost immediately, when we have discussions about mass shootings in America, it immediately turns into a dichotomy between people that want to talk about mental health access and people that want to talk about gun control. And I don't want to talk about either of those things immediately. Firstly, I would like to just say that there are terrible actions that are committed by deranged individuals, and sometimes it is difficult to predict this type of behavior, and also sometimes there are very clear warning signs that go ignored by everybody in their lives. But I said that Sandy Hook was a very pivotal moment in not only American culture, but the culture of the internet, because so many people took to this story and they began to try and formulate theories and observations about the mass shooting that were very conspiratorial. Firstly, there was the story of a second gunman, someone seen wearing camouflage clothing on the premises that was an active participant. There was the more famous version that the shooting was a hoax that had been orchestrated by not only the media, but also elements of a larger movement, a larger school of thought, and even possibly the New World Order in an attempt to disarm the public, that many of these mass shootings are actually hoaxes that they're putting out to try and disarm the American populace and get rid of the Second Amendment. And there was even a third conspiracy theory that came after the shooting, and that is perhaps one of the most outrageous, and that is that Adam Lanza, the shooter, never existed. And they would point to evidence that they believe that the most famous photograph of him that has been shared is one that was purely photoshopped, that they took a photo of an existing male, and then they photoshopped it and darkened the eyes and altered the cheeks to make it look like a fictitious character named Adam Lanza, and that the only reason why he was chosen is because there were a few things, like the name Adam Lanza was found in a yearbook with no photo. Very few people remembered him. So people began to share this idea online that there wasn't even a single gunman, there wasn't even this mentally deranged early 20s individual, that it was all just done by different people, complete hoax and orchestration. And this also was very big in fueling the crisis actor theory, that they brought in a bunch of crisis actors to pretend like they were either victims or the parents of the lost ones. And I'm sure you guys saw some of the news coverage around this one. But to address these particular points first, one reason why they thought that the shooting was a hoax was the fact that there were 26 victims in the Sandy Hook shooting who passed away, and there was one person who was shot and injured. However, that sounded just absolutely bizarre, because in the majority of shootings, and I do agree with this, you'll see more people who are injured rather than more fatalities. And there was such an odd contrast between the number of fatalities versus the number of injured, 26 to 1. And I don't think that there's anything weird about that when you read it in the full story, or just reading that encyclopedia entry from Britannica when it talks about how the reason why there were so many fatalities as opposed to people who were injured and survived is that Adam Lanza cornered students and teachers in the classroom, and they did not have a clear exit and a clear pathway to get out of there. So that's what led to the high number of deaths. It's just people were trapped, and absolutely saddening. And when I talked about warning signs, some of the other pieces of evidence they found from Adam Lanza's home is that he had cut up trash bags and he had sealed up the windows where he was staying in his room with black plastic trash bags and duct tape were used to secure them over the windows. Again, some very bizarre behavior, and Adam Lanza did have genuine mental issues, even though I don't simply want to talk about just getting people more access to mental health resources, because that just becomes a talking point. That just becomes a single line that people say, and it doesn't exactly recognize a concept that no matter what, human beings have this very destructive tendency toward each other. And I've told this story on the channel before, but I'll share it again. I was just channel surfing one night years and years ago, back when we actually channel surfed, and I came across an episode of Dr. Drew where they were talking about how events like this represent a very dark and violent side of human nature that has always been there, but it's just because of the media that we are now learning about it so easily. And after the Newtown shooting, though, a lot of people did not latch on to that narrative. They didn't simply accept that there's this dark and violent side of humanity that definitely does deal with mental health issues. I don't want to downplay that. Adam Lanza was not in any sane state when he committed the crime. I mean, would the authorities have been able to say not guilty by mental disease or defect? That I don't know, and we will never know. We don't know if he would have been found guilty or not guilty by an insanity defense. I mean, we can talk about that until the end of time. But people didn't really want to explore those pathways. Lots of individuals turned to the internet, and any time there was another mass shooting, they began to say that they were staged, that they were faked, and that they were just orchestrated, again, by the higher powers of the American political process to try and disarm the public. And as you can tell from this episode, I do not support that type of thinking at all, and I don't support any of those theories. Even the Elliot Rodgers shooting in Isla Vista in 2014 became a subject of that, where there were photographs of the authorities on the scene, and they had put tarps on the ground. And they said, why are there tarps on the ground? This is clearly a staged crime scene, because the authorities had put tarps out for some reason. I'm sure they had one, but just because there's a covering over patches of grass, it doesn't mean that it's all been orchestrated and set up. And here is something that is even more important to talk about. Sometimes people genuinely know that what they're saying on the internet is not true, and they don't care because they benefit from it. They don't care because they know that people are going to watch their video, and I always get skeptical about that. And as you can see very easily, this is going to segue into another subject involving a certain radio host named Alex Jones. Was he in that category? Alex Jones became vilified in the court of public opinion for endorsing certain theories about how Sandy Hook could have been faked or staged, and he even did a very famous deposition where he appeared answering questions that were posed by an attorney, and to be honest, I think that they wanted to make an example out of him, and they wanted to try and file a lawsuit against him, and just to show that they didn't want people to be making comments like this in the future. However, there is a recent update about this from just this month. This came out about 2 weeks ago. Alex Jones files for bankruptcy following $1.5 billion Sandy Hook verdicts. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones filed for bankruptcy in December of 2022 after he and the parent of his InfoWars website, that is weird, were ordered to pay $1.5 billion for spreading lies about the 2012 Sandy Hook mass shooting. Jones filed for Chapter 11 protection from creditors with the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Houston, a court filing showed. The filing said Jones has between $1 million and $10 million in assets and between $1 billion and $10 billion of liabilities. The extent of Jones's personal wealth is unclear. Jones claimed that the 2012 killing of 20 students and 6 staff members at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut was staged with actors as part of a government plot to seize Americans' guns. He has since acknowledged that the shooting occurred, but plaintiffs said Jones cashed in for years with lies about the massacre. And when I said they wanted to make an example out of him, during the deposition, they showed that Alex Jones stated the location of certain buildings correctly, talking about how there were children walking around a particular building, and he identified it correctly. Then 3 months later, he misidentified that particular building, and they said, this is an example of him lying. I am somebody who believes that there's a difference between a lie and a mistake. Now, did he fully know that he was putting out incorrect information about Sandy Hook? I don't know. I'm not a mind reader and I'm not a psychic. But I don't think that they actually proved in that deposition that he intentionally lied, or even that he genuinely lied, or that he shared any information knowingly that was untrue, because there's a difference between saying something and then 3 months later not being able to recreate something word for word, or remembering everything with 100% accuracy. And some of you might be thinking, you're giving him way too much credit. He probably knew what he was doing. Probably, perhaps. But there's a difference between just guessing and proving something in a court of law. And in 3 months, yes, people can forget things, and demonstrating this, even in civil court, where it's just who has the larger pieces of evidence. But as you see from this article here, this is actually from Reuters, it talks very clearly about what I was saying about how Alex Jones was talking about a plan to disarm American citizens, and that's why the Sandy Hook shooting was faked. I do not support any of that, and I do not think very highly of that particular theory. But there are some additional comments here. Like every other cowardly move Alex Jones has made, this bankruptcy will not work, said Chris Mattei, an attorney representing Sandy Hook families. The American judicial system will hold Alex Jones accountable, and he will never stop working to enforce the jury's verdict. Mattei said Jones had engaged in intentional attacks, and the bankruptcy system would not protect him. A lawyer for Jones did not immediately return a request for a comment. In October, a Connecticut jury said Jones and Free Speech Systems, the parent company of InfoWars, should pay nearly $1 billion in damages to numerous families of the Sandy Hook shooting. The Connecticut court later ordered Jones to pay an additional $473 million. That's what brings together the $1.5 billion number. The trial was marked by weeks of anguished testimony from the families, who recounted how Jones's lies about Sandy Hook compounded their grief. Free Speech Systems filed for bankruptcy in July. In a separate case in Texas, a jury in August decided that Alex Jones must pay the parents of a 6-year-old boy killed in the Sandy Hook shooting $45 million in punitive damages, and on top of that, $4.1 million in compensatory damages. Jones's lawyer said that he would appeal this in the Connecticut and Texas courts. Bankruptcy can be used to wipe out debts, but not if they are the result of willful or malicious injury caused by the debtor. Jones's lies appear to meet the standard, said Susan Block-Leib, a former bankruptcy law attorney at Fordham University School of Law. Defamation is pretty clearly an intentional tort. It is especially clear in Alex Jones's case, she said. The filing also comes with risk for Jones, who will have to disclose all of his assets in court, said bankruptcy lawyer Sidney Sheinberg. Now that he's filed for bankruptcy, his assets are an open book. An economist in the Texas case estimated that Jones is worth between $135 million and $270 million. Well, I mean, I think you guys can see that that is considerably less than the 1.5 billion that he is ordered to pay. And yes, they're trying to make an example out of him, and they're trying to put an end to a lot of the abilities that Alex Jones had to spread these types of campaigns. And I was about to say disinfo campaigns, but I'm trying to be very careful with my words, so I didn't say that immediately, because Alex Jones has done this for years, and he talked about a lot of things for years, and his platform was one that initially had acts of skepticism, and he was questioning things. If you go back to the 1990s and you watch him on public access television, when he's talking about how local politicians in Texas are trying to pass laws, but goes to their home and shows that they're violating the laws and regulations that they're trying to pass, I mean, that stuff may have had some value. And then things got a little bit more conspiratorial, talking about how there were black helicopters that were spying on people, and the point is that nobody cared. Nobody cared because it was so outrageous that they wanted to hear what he was going to say next. And this is something that just takes off. Howard Stern even talked about this in his book, which was then turned into a movie called Private Parts, about how people who did not like him would listen to his radio show longer because they wanted to hear what he would have to say next. And that's what happens with a lot of these conspiracy theories. I mean, I watched so many videos on YouTube about how these shootings were faked, and all of those things about how there were types of reasons why they thought that certain shootings were not real, and not even mass shootings, but one of them that involved only several people, perhaps you could call it a mass shooting, was the on-air murder committed by Vesterly Flanagan, who used the online name Bryce. And one guy was saying that there is a hand of a Caucasian male wearing a blue shirt, but there was a reflection of an African American male wearing a black shirt, so then it couldn't be the same person. It was faked footage, when very clearly it was one person who just had a blue shirt underneath a black shirt. And yes, Vesterly Flanagan committed that one while it was being recorded. So you could see how people just made piss poor attempts to manipulate the footage, and or not even manipulate the footage, but manipulate the narrative surrounding the footage. And with Alex Jones, his wife turned ex-wife Kelly Jones went on the air in numerous places very publicly, and she stated that what people need to understand about Alex Jones is he believes everything that he is saying. He believes all these things about the New World Order and government conspiracies, but he also thinks that certain aspects of his business are very profitable. And I think that the latter of those two statements became more important for Alex Jones over the years. And that's why he began to focus on certain aspects, going with the trends, the whole concept of how someone in the media is talking about what's popular and then gains a following and then follows the trends. He talks about popular subjects and he becomes even more popular. This happens all the time. And it's not only with Alex Jones. He's just one of the more famous examples, because in the past he was always somebody who was defending a form of classical liberalism and libertarianism that was going against a lot of the things that he began to say in 2015 and 16. So I think that he definitely decided to continue onward with certain popularized ideas, again being very careful with my words. And I'm going to tell you guys flat out, I don't care what anyone's political affiliation is. When it comes to these actual conspiracy theories, I want to know, is there any truth to them? Where is the truth and where are the falsehoods? The concept of separating the chicken shit from the chicken salad. And you will find that if you do investigate conspiracy theories, there are elements of truth in them. And there's that whole saying out there that in every conspiracy, there's a grain of truth. No, it's not a grain. I mean, you'll find out that these conspiracy theorists are pushing narratives that can sometimes even be 50% true. And conspiracy theorists use real facts. It's just sometimes there are fictitious connections that have been made among these particular facts, so it looks like they are just stark raving mad, but in reality, they are not. They are onto something. However, they also make lots of mistakes along the way. And that would be relevant to some of the stuff that Alex Jones was saying 20, 25 years ago. More like 25 years ago, if we can be precise. Anything involving these mass shootings being hoaxes, I repeat, hoaxes, I do not support that, and it's questionable whether or not the material was intentionally fabricated. Did they actually prove to my satisfaction that Alex Jones fabricated what he was saying in regards to these mass shootings? I don't quite believe so, because, as I said, they didn't get specific enough with the accusations to the point where it was something that could have been done by human error. And some people view that as a lie. They're like, no, you say something that isn't true, it's a lie, even if you did it by mistake. I don't think like that. I differentiate between mistakes and lies. But I didn't mean for this episode to actually go on so long about Alex Jones. But what I really meant to talk about was how the Sandy Hook shooting affected modern culture. And what I saw is that the internet exploded with people just looking for abnormalities in the story, and they attach themselves to all of these bizarre beliefs about how the uh, the American political system is trying to disarm the public using mass shootings, which are completely hoax and they aren't even involving real people and they're all crisis actors. And that narrative went on for years. I don't just mean like 1 year or 2 years. We're talking about a substantial portion of the last decade. Those types of theories were everywhere. I mean, you could find them just so easily online. And also, the other example that I talked about this idea that Adam Lanza wasn't even a real person and that all the photos you saw of him were just photoshopped and digitally altered. I don't support that particular theory either. So I think that sometimes conspiracy theories are true and other times they are false. But what do you think about this? Do you have anything to share about the Sandy Hook shooting or the way that people responded to it online or the way that people were reacting to it in the conspiratorial world, or any comments about Alex Jones? I would like to read your comments down below. Anything is welcome. Share your idea. I mean, anything that is welcome in a respectful way to the victims, that is. And the final note that I would say is, when I did the episode on Jake Davis and the Plymouth shooter from the United Kingdom, someone said, "You're giving the shooter a platform. Please do not do that." And I absolutely refute that statement because whether it's Jake Davison or Adam Lanza or even Elliot Rodger, whom I mentioned briefly, they were wrong. They were wrong and they were completely responsible. Absolutely. They were the people who were carrying the guns, and in many of those instances, they showed very calculating moves, that they were aware of their activities at the time. They were completely wrong. And with both Jake Davison and Adam Lanza, and actually even Elliot Rodger, they aren't ever going to find Black Box Online Radio because they're all dead. They all committed suicide, and so this whole thing about some way, somehow, the killer's going to find out that people are talking about him on the internet and enjoy it. No, he won't. In all of those instances that I cited, they're all deceased. So, absolutely, the shooters are wrong. But one thing that we do have with the powers of free speech is that we can talk about certain subjects and we can respond to what happens in our world and our societies. And that's what I'm going to try to do. And I'm going to try and be as honest as I can. And when I think somebody is pushing a narrative that I think is completely false, like these mass shooting hoaxers, I'm going to say that I think their narrative is wrong. But I want to read your comments down below. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And that's all for me now, and I will see you over on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.